Okay, let's unpack this. We're taking a deep dive today, looking beyond the current headlines to understand, well, a much deeper history and the whole concept of resilience when it comes to Gaza.
Exactly. And for this particular dive, we're focused squarely on one source, excerpts from an article called Gaza, A History of Resilience.
Right. So just to be clear for everyone listening, our mission here is really specific. We want to get into this text, understand the points it's making, the story it's telling.
And pull out the insights in the history as this specific article presents them.
Yeah. We're basically walking you through this source's view of Gaza's long journey and how it talks about resilience. It's all about what this article says.
And it starts, really far back, like 4,000 years plus.
That's incredible depth. It paints this picture of Gaza as, a real crossroads for millennia.
It does. The article mentions it starting as a Canaanite city and then lists this long line of rulers, Egyptians, Philistines.
Right, and it even brings in that Philistine connection, the one from the Hebrew Bible, Samson and Delilah.
Yes, the source places that story right there in Gaza's Philistine past. Then it transitions into the Islamic era. The article says this began peacefully around 637 CE.
Under the Rashidun Caliphate. And the article seems to stress Gaza's importance then, as a center for Islamic learning.
It definitely does. It notes that Imam al-Shafi was born there in 767 CE.
Wow!
Yeah, and according to the text, Gaza stayed under various Muslim empires, Umayyads, Abbasids, Ayyubids, Mamluks, Ottomans for like 1,000 years.
A millennium.
And it often thrived, the article says, as a spiritual center but also a trading hub.
So that long history leads us up to the 20th century, which the article describes quite starkly. It uses the word trauma.
It does use that word. It's talking about the time after World War I, the Ottoman Empire falls, and Gaza ends up in British-occupied Palestine under the Mandate system.
And this source describes how, during that Mandate period, the British facilitated Zionist immigration. The article states this led to, well, rising tensions.
Clashes, too, with the native Arab population, according to the source.
Okay. And then the article tackles the Nakba in 1948. It translates it as the catastrophe.
Yes, and it describes it as this mass expulsion, citing over 750,000 Palestinians forced from their homes.
And the impact on Gaza specifically, as laid out in this text, was huge. Loads of Palestinians fled there.
Which, the article says, tripled the population almost overnight. It became what the source calls a massive refugee zone.
Fundamentally changing the place.
Completely reshaped it, is how the article puts it. And then it moves forward to 1967, the Six-Day War, and the Israeli occupation of Gaza, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem.
And the source details what life was like under direct Israeli military control then.
Yeah, it mentions land confiscations, the expansion of settlements, curfews, and what the article refers to as routine oppression.
Which brings us closer to the present day, a period the source frames as Gaza under siege.
Right. It mentions the Oslo Accords in the 90s. The source's take is that they promised some autonomy.
But those hopes, it says, kind of faded as settlements kept expanding.
Exactly. And then it notes the 2005 Israeli withdrawal of settlements, but, and this is key according to the article, Gaza remained under tight Israeli control.
Leading to the blockade.
A blockade, yeah. The source says it's been in place since 2007 after Hamas took political control imposed by Israel with Egypt's support mentioned as well.
And the article paints a really grim picture of the consequences. What does it list?
Well, it's stark. Over 2 million people trapped in, 365 square kilometers? Tiny area? It states 98% of the water is undrinkable. Chronic shortages, food, electricity, medicine, and youth unemployment, the article says, is over 50%.
Just devastating statistics presented there, and then it talks about the cycles of war.
Yes, it lists several specific conflicts or military assaults. 2008-09, 2012, 2014, 2021, and then the ongoing one from 2023-24.
And the human cost described.
Significant. The article mentions thousands of civilian casualties, highlighting women and children. It also lists targets of bombing, according to the text. Residential towers, schools, mosques, hospitals, even UN shelters.
Yet, despite all that, the source includes this really powerful line.
That Gaza still refuses to break.
Yeah, and that seems to be the pivot point where the article really focuses on resilience, linking it strongly to Islamic faith.
Absolutely. The text presents Islamic faith as sort of the bedrock, a central source of strength, identity, and resistance for the people there.
How does it explain that? What concepts does it bring up?
It highlights a few key Islamic concepts. Sabr, which is patience, especially through hardship. Tawakkul, a deep trust in Allah, in God. And Iman, unwavering faith. The article presents these as driving endurance.
and it backs this up with religious texts.
It does. It cites a verse from the Quran, Surah Al-Imran, chapter 3, verse 139. The translation provided is something like, "Do not weaken and do not grieve, and you will be superior if you are true believers."
Okay.
And also a hadith, a saying from the Prophet Muhammad from a collection called Sahih Muslim, says, "The strong believer is better and more beloved to Allah than the weak believer."
So the source uses these to show the foundation for the resilience it's describing.
Exactly. And it defines this resilience, interestingly, not just as like bare survival.
Right, it's more than that.
It's about living with dignity even while under siege. That's the framing in the article.
Does it give examples of what that looks like in practice?
It does, yeah, quite vividly. Things like teaching children the Quran by candlelight when the power's out, or families holding together when their home is destroyed, maintaining belief in justice, even when, as the article puts it, the world seems silent.
Powerful images.
And the source frames this steadfastness, this dignity, as a form of jihad.
Okay, but it clarifies that, not necessarily armed struggle.
Right, the article emphasizes it's about steadfastness, holding on to truth, maintaining dignity. It then cites another Quranic verse, Surah Fusilat, 41.3, about steadfast believers and angels descending.
So where does the article leave things regarding the future?
Well, it acknowledges the future is uncertain, obviously, but it emphasizes the continued hope among the people described.
And it includes a call to action directed at the wider Muslim community.
Yes, the Ummah. The source urges them not to forget Gaza, calling it the front line of dignity. It specifically encourages speaking truth, supporting the oppressed, and making dua prayer or supplication for the people of Gaza.
And it pushes back against seeing them just as victims.
Very strongly. The source asserts they are heroes, not victims. It connects this to another hadith. The believers are like one body. If one part is in pain, the whole body suffers. It's a call for empathy and solidarity.
So the article's concluding thought is quite profound then.
It really is. It suggests Gaza isn't just a place on a map anymore. It's become an idea.
An idea? How so?
An idea, as the source presents it, where truth is stronger than tyranny, faith overcomes fear, and the oppressed are somehow closer to God.
That's the final message the article leaves us with.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The Gaza lives on not just geographically, but in every oppressed heart, and anyone who refuses to bow to injustice. That's the picture the source paints.
Okay, so that brings us through this specific source, the article Gaza, A History of Resilience. We've traced the historical narrative it lays out and explored its perspective on faith, dignity, and steadfastness.
And again, just to reiterate, we've really stuck to conveying the story and the viewpoints as presented in this one article.
Absolutely. And it leaves us with that powerful final thought. It presents Gaza as this enduring idea, a symbol persisting in those who resist injustice.
It really makes you think about that specific concept from the text, doesn't it? What does it mean, according to this source, for a place with such a difficult history to become a symbol that lives inside people? That framing of resilience. It's definitely something to reflect on, based purely on the article's conclusion.